Hello, and welcome to Socially Holistic Podcast. Socially Holistic helps coaches and holistic entrepreneurs and women in heart-centered businesses make sense of social media so they can build their own online network and get more clients. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a 5-star review of this podcast. Please leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more heart-centered businesses will be successful. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Socially Holistic Podcast, episode 64. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's very special guest, Tina Forsyth from Automate Your Growth. Tina is a business leverage expert. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here today. Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your business and what it is that you do?
So my business, I actually have a couple of divisions of my business. Automate Your Growth is kind of a key focus of what I like to help people with. We specialize in helping entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small business owners with very few, if any, employees who are looking to grow a sustainable company. We really help work with entrepreneurs to set up the business foundation that they can grow on. So there's a mix of looking at their leverage business model, looking at their business structure, their team, kind of all that behind the scenes stuff that can help run a business and in some cases, quite honestly, make or break a business. So we like to kind of consider ourselves a little bit of a mini MBA for entrepreneurs, but without actually having to go to school for a couple of years or however many years to get that figured out. And we also do some work training and certifying online business managers as well to work with some of these clients so that you can have some great support and great people to hire to work with your business too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you're also the author of the book, The Entrepreneur's Trap, correct?
Yes, exactly.
And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's kind of funny because it started with a bit of a pet peeve of mine a number of years ago. I've had my business now since '99, so I've worked for myself in various forms for just over 15 years now. And in that time, there was a time when I used to do a lot of weekends, when I used to kind of work 24/7, but it's been a number of years now since I hadn't done that. And I think this was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember one Monday morning, I hopped online. I had an email from a colleague of mine. She had sent an email out on Saturday morning. And her email had said, hey, I think she was doing a summit, like a telesummit or something. And she had popped an email out Saturday morning saying, hey, I'm doing this summit. If you're interested in speaking, if you want to be featured, just email me back, let me know. And it was a little bit of like a first come, first serve thing. Right? Like there's so many spots available, first come, first serve. And so first thing Monday morning, I see this email. I'm like, oh, hey, I respond. I'm like, sure, I'd love to do this. That'd be great. And she's like, oh, they were all like filled, like Saturday afternoon. I'm like, am I the only person not working on the weekend? Like, what the heck's going on here, right? And it kind of sparked this I really started to notice more and more over time where a lot of colleagues, a lot of people who I was working with or people who I was meeting in various places, various connections I was making over time, that a lot of people were in the space that they were building their business. They were cracking the code, so to speak, of how to make money. They were learning how to find their clients and how to serve their clients and all of that fun stuff that we absolutely need to master, especially in the earlier stages of our business. But then behind the scenes, their business was starting to suck the life out of them in various ways. For some of them, they were trying to do it all themselves and basically end up working way more than they ever would have, in a job or something like that in the past, trying to do things that they hate doing anyhow, having it all on their shoulders and all on their plate. They were making money. It was going out the door just as fast again in many cases, which can be a bit of a rude awakening for some of us when we're in this space of like, oh, if only I hit this certain amount of money, it'll all be fine. And then you hit that stage and go, wait a minute, where the heck did it all go? Which can absolutely happen. Been there, done that. Myself too. And just also too, this sort of this space where I was seeing these entrepreneurs create amazing businesses that deserve to have a strong foundation behind them. I would see people kind of come and go because quite honestly, they would get burnt out by their business. Yeah. They would be doing great work. They would be reaching, having an impact, doing some amazing programs and offerings out there. And then they would end up having to pull back. just because of the weight of everything that it can take to run a business when we think we have to do it a certain way.
I absolutely love that. And I think I absolutely love the title of your book as well, because I feel like there is this trap that we all get sucked into. And it can be really, really challenging because so often these days, entrepreneurs have no previous business experience or no previous management experience, and they've had this job that didn't make them happy, and they decide to quit and start their own thing, but they don't have the basic fundamentals of information that they need to run their business without it sucking the life out of them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's the thing too, because this part of the beauty of the world we live in these days is the fact that there is a real ease to entry into entrepreneurship. I mean, we can literally take our background, take our expertise, and somebody could decide today, hey, I'm going to start working as a web designer tomorrow because I have web design skills. You can literally get a client tomorrow if you wanted to and start doing that. And so part of the beauty of that is the fact that these opportunities are available to so many of us, and these opportunities, really to everyone, should they decide they want to go for it, if it's a fit for them. And of course, we can start making money, we can make a good living, and to a degree, that's fine. To a degree, that's very doable. But when somebody shifts from the space of making a living for themselves through their business to a space of, I really want to take this to the next level. I really want to grow. I kind of say that there's that stage where your business gets bigger than you.
Yes.
Which is for many service-based entrepreneurs that's who I specialize in working with. That's usually around the 6-figure mark, right? It's up to 6 figures. You can kind of get away with it. So to speak, just kind of making things happen, do it on your own, a little bit of help here and there, maybe a little messy, but, no real consequences. That's okay. Once you hit 6 figures and above, that's where it can become a real, smack in the face. If we're not careful, that's where it becomes the trap. If we're not careful and purposeful too, right? So because it's so easy to get into business, we jump in really not knowing what the heck we're getting into.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey as far as getting caught in the entrepreneur trap and getting out of it, and then teaching people how to, deal with this. You've been in business since 1999, which I absolutely love because so have I. So I feel
that's awesome.
I know, a very different business, and I had completely gotten sucked into, my business. It completely took the life out of me, and I ended up quitting it and starting something new. So tell us a little bit about your business journey and how you got to where you are today, as far as, having the systems down and training other people to do the same.
It's a little bit of, I would say my own personal journey has been a little bit of just doing what comes naturally to me. Because it was really I've always been really great at running things behind the scenes. When I started my business in 99, I initially thought I was going to become a coach, like a life coach or a career coach, whatever it was at the time. Went through my coach training, and I remember at one point I quit the work I was doing. I was doing some contract work, and I'm like, I'm going to focus on my business full time. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I had no clients. Right. And then I had an opportunity come up to work behind the scenes of a really large coach training and mentorship organization at that time, Coachville, which was run by Thomas Leonard, who has unfortunately passed away now as of 2003. But he's very much the founder of the coaching industry for many intents and purposes. So I had an opportunity to work with his company back in early part of 2002 and to work behind the scenes. And I think I started as an event manager or something like that. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to do this on the side while I work on building my coaching business. And then it very quickly flipped the other way around, though, because I got on the back end of this business. I got on the back end of this really fast-growing, multi-million-dollar company, which at that point in time was not the norm by any means. You see much more of that now than we did back in those days. And really, behind the scenes, it was a lot. There was a lot going on, and it was quite messy in a lot of ways, right? It was a very creatively run company. So I remember jumping in there, and we were working our butts off. We were working 24/7. We were making things happen. But then at the same time, there was a lot of burnout. There was a lot of people would kind of come and go. People would hit walls at a certain point because it was really hard to kind of keep up with everything that was going on. And from there, after I was no longer working with that company anymore, I decided to continue to work on the back end of various 6- and 7-figure businesses as an online business manager. And I did that for a number of years. And so I was it was sort of like a from the inside out thing, right? Where I was doing work with these clients. I was seeing what their businesses were made of. I was figuring out ways to run the business, what worked, what didn't work, so that this business could, these businesses could continue to grow and expand. And along the way, kind of found a little bit of a formula, if you will, as to what it takes to actually run a business. Behind the scenes, that's what led me to creating my training program, my first certification, which is the Online Business Manager training and certification. So that's to train other people like myself who came from that kind of behind the scenes world, how to manage other people's businesses for them. And I started doing that back in 2009. I started that training program then. Along the way, though, it was interesting because I was training and certifying these online business managers to go out and work with the entrepreneurs who needed their help, who were overwhelmed, busy, kind of like struggling behind the scenes, et cetera. And then I found that there was this kind of other side of the coin that I needed to focus on, which was looking at the entrepreneur themselves and really helping them identify, okay, you've got this, you've created a beast, so to speak. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it now? And ideally, too, to help people not create a beast if they can help it, because I don't think it always needs to get to a painful place. Although if it is in a painful place, that's always fixable as well, too. But I know for me personally, I made some really clear decisions a number of years ago that I just was not going to work 24/7. It's like I went through, when you kind of look at the various aspects of being in what I call the entrepreneur's trap, one of them is time. And I think the entrepreneurial world in a lot of ways has done a real disservice of sorts, where there's that, it's what's glorified is that, you got to sacrifice your life to create success. And depending on what you want to create, and how fast you want to create it, yes, that might be required for some people. But for many of us who just, we want to make a great living, we want to build a good business, we want to serve the people that we know we're meant to serve and that we want to work with. We're not necessarily looking to build an empire and take over the world, so to speak. There isn't the necessity to work 24/7.
And I think also a lot of people go into business for themselves because they want a different kind of lifestyle that they've had, working 9 to 5. And oftentimes people find out that working for themselves, they've created this beast, as you say, that does not allow them to live the lifestyle that they originally wanted.
Well, that's exactly it. I talked to people who, I did a little bit of a survey a while ago, and I can't remember, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but there was a surprising number of people who are working weekends when they don't want to be working weekends. And, most people I know are checking their email and checking their phones and taking their laptops with them on vacation and all this kind of stuff. When exactly to your point, that's not why we started this in the first place. Exactly. That's not why I wanted to do this kind of work. And so I was really purposeful years ago, around about the time when my daughters were born, that I just decided, I'm not working weekends anymore. I'm not working weekends anymore, and I don't. If I'm traveling and it happens to be on a Saturday, Sunday, then, definitely I'm working then, so to speak. But other than that, I don't work weekends. And because I made that decision, that kind of lends itself to what I'm willing to do and not do within my business too. And
I think it's important that you say that that's a conscious decision that you've made, because I also do not turn my computer on the weekends unless, say, I've taken, half the day off on Friday because I felt burnt out and, want to make up the time. But as a rule, I don't work on weekends either. And I find that that's very, very rare. So I think it is something you have to make a conscious decision, as you said.
And I think, too, the other side of that, too, though, right, is that I think the other piece that happens for entrepreneurs is that, in theory, they don't want to work weekends, or they don't want to work 24/7, or they don't want to work evenings, whatever the time frame is, right? It's up to us to decide when we want to work and what that looks like. I think for some entrepreneurs, they might think that they don't want to work weekends, but if you don't have anything more compelling to do, then you'll get sucked into work.
Of course, especially if you're passionate about your work.
Exactly. And so that's why I say, too, it's not like hard and fast rules. I remember when I went to write the book, The Entrepreneur's Trap, there a couple of years ago, when I was in writing mode. At first, I was kind of felt like I was almost going to shake my finger at people, you should not work weekends kind of thing, right? And then I remember when I was talking to people and interviewing people for the book and getting into the writing mode, and it kind of hit me at one point. It's like, it's not about any hard and fast rules. It's really about making a decision that works for each one of us. And if somebody wants to work weekends, great. Go ahead and work weekends. I mean, I really do believe people need to have at least one day off a week, just to literally, like, physically, mentally, emotionally unplug, recover, etc. I think that's really important for all kinds of reasons, health, stress, all those things too. Sanity in some cases too, right? But whatever day that falls on for someone is fine. Some people I know, they're fine to work weekends, but they don't work evenings, or, they only work half days. There can be various combinations that we choose here. But the fact is that sometimes when people are addicted, or when people are wanting to work all the time, it's because they're addicted to their work.
Yeah.
There's nothing more compelling. I always warn people when they come to me and they say, I'm going to stop working Saturdays. For example, they're like, I always work Saturdays, I just check in the morning and, I end up getting sucked in and working a few hours and I don't even know what happened. But, my family's getting frustrated or I'm frustrated. I want to start taking Saturdays off. The number one thing I always say when somebody mentions that they want to change their working habit, their working schedule, is you have to find something more compelling to do on Saturdays then. Mm-hmm. It's not as simple to say, I'm going to stop doing this. It's like, I'm going to start doing this instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if we don't, we'll sit there and be like, okay, I'm bored. May as well go check my email, and go on your merry way.
Yeah, because it's a matter of breaking a habit. Because if you're in the habit of working on Saturdays, then you're just going to keep doing it.
And I think there is a habit to be broken. Like, I don't have email come to my phone.
Excellent.
I don't have anything that pops up. Like you said, you don't turn on your laptop on the weekend. I don't touch my laptop on the weekend. If I do, I can guarantee you I'd be sucked into it.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even go near it kind of thing. It's like, it's just, I'll get sucked in. I know myself too well. I don't have email come to my phone. I don't have things popping up that are saying, hey, check this, check this, check this.
Yeah.
Because nobody can resist that. We can't resist the lure of, like, the ping or the little, hey, so it's like, we need to be really careful to protect and kind of honor that time too. If we have messages coming to our phone, if we have things like that, notifications and all kinds of stuff popping up, turn it off.
Yeah. And it's so easy to do that. It's just a matter of, changing the settings. And I think you just need to do whatever you need to do, because there was a time when I first, stopped working on weekends, where I would actually have to close the door to my office because I didn't want to see my desk luring me into, exciting work. So I just closed the door, and then I couldn't see it.
Well, what was it for you? Because you mentioned that you got burnt out.
Yes. Well, that was the thing. In my first business that I had for 10 and a half years, I worked, 24/7, totally got burnt out to the point of making myself, sick several times a year, when I would just crash and burn and just stay in bed for a week as I recovered. And with, my businesses that I created after that, I realized I did not want to have that lifestyle, but yet it was really ingrained in my mind after having, worked like that for 10 years in my own business. And so, I just had to do what it took to, reduce the notifications on my phone, close the door to my office, and just, remind myself that I did not want to be in a place where I was constantly burning myself out again. It was making a conscious decision to just not do the same over again.
Yeah, yeah. And it does take a conscious decision, right? Because I think that is one of those sort of misconceptions when we get into business. Like you said already, too, it's like people are like, oh, I want to have freedom and I want to choose when I'm going to work and what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. And of course, that's, and make some money. I mean, that's why we all get into business for ourselves, is some variation of freedom, meaning, and money. And then if we're not careful, though, we easily jump in here and realize, what the heck did I get myself into? And find ourselves in that space of, like, having to do things we don't want to be doing and spending time we don't want to be spending. And it's almost sneaky. Like, you just wake up one day going, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? For me too, though, when you're asking about part of my own personal journey, I've always been pretty good with the time piece for a number of years, just because I made those decisions and I'm really clear with the boundaries of, not checking things weekends and stuff like that. Part of my bigger shift too, though, was just learning what I do and don't need to keep on my own plate.
Yeah.
Because I always say I'm the ultimate recovering control freak in business. I come from a background of, like, I know how to do things and I can figure stuff out. And I spent many years doing a lot of things for other people. So being the one behind the scenes and running the business and running the day-to-day. And so when my business back in 2009, when I really changed my business model and I started to grow a training company as opposed to being a service provider, working one-on-one with clients, when my business started to grow bigger than me at that stage, that was one of the hardest shifts for me too, was like, oh, I can't keep all these things on my plate anymore. Like I shouldn't be, otherwise that would have led to working 24/7 again, and getting really, really clear about, okay, what do I need to have on my plate? What do I not need to have on my plate? How do I get the right support? How do I get the right help? What does a business structure look like? How do we run this thing day to day so that it's doable in that regard? I mean, that was definitely my bigger shift for the first couple of years there, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say are your top tips for business owners who have reached that point where, they've created this beast, they need to tame it, and they're not sure what to do? I mean, do they hire an online business manager? Do they, get a VA? How do they figure out what the heck it is to do to get this thing under control that is their business?
I think first and foremost, it really is looking at, I call this creating your yes list, is looking at what should and should not be on your plate.
Oh, excellent.
As the business owner. So the yes list, essentially for all of us, it kind of falls into the same categories. What you want to keep on your plate when you have a growing company. See, in the beginning, I get it. We kind of do a little bit of everything sometimes, within reason. It's like, what is that? Chef, cook, and bottle washer, or whatever that saying is. It's looking, we kind of in the earlier stages might need to do a little bit of everything. But when you want to continue to grow and expand, then you need to get really purposeful as to what requires your time and energy. And basically the two categories that are on an entrepreneur's yes list are the things that you do to make you money. So if somebody is a web designer, you're going to be doing web design, right? Like working on client projects or things like that. Or somebody's a copywriter, or somebody does coaching, or whatever it is. You want to be doing the work with your clients. And the second piece is anything that it takes to grow your business. So essentially like sales and marketing activities. Now, the first piece there is usually the stuff that we love to do. It's usually the reason why we started our business is because, I love to do X, and I want to help people with X. The second piece is quite often the part that we don't necessarily want to do. Sales, marketing. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody would come along and take those things off our plate? Not to say that you can't get help with some of those things day to day, or in general, but overall, you still need to own the driving the growth of your company. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care about that as much as you do for your own business. And it's dangerous to kind of delegate that. But when we get clear on those things and we start to really pay attention to what we're spending our time on day in and day out, if somebody is a coach, they shouldn't be figuring out how to post something on their blog or how to send out their e-zine or how to mess around with the latest little, gadget that popped up and things like that. There's a lot of techie, administrative, back end things, anything that is what I call a lather, rinse, repeat activity. So, once a week we do X and you just follow the same steps every week to do X. Well, that kind of stuff can come off your plate.
Yeah.
Once there's a clear and proven process, that can come off your plate. And so it starts with really knowing what we ourselves need to focus on. And then over time, you can start to let go of more and more things that are either on your plate and shouldn't be, or that need to get done, but haven't been done yet because you don't know how to do them in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very good point. I see a lot of business owners even, trying to do their own website. And I just think, there are so many people out there that do that for a wide variety of prices. Just find someone who fits your budget and just get it done.
Seriously, I totally agree with you. I remember years ago, we had a client had come and asked about, I got to learn how to use this, whatever shopping cart system at the time. Right. And it was like, where do I learn how to do this? It's like, you don't.
Yeah, don't. Just outsource.
You don't. We need to know what our strengths are, what our area of brilliance is, and hire the people who love to do the things that you either don't know how to do or don't want to do anyhow.
Exactly, because there's always someone out there that loves the stuff that you hate to do. I mean, there are bookkeepers that love taking care of your records and doing your taxes, and that's fantastic. So that's like Infusionsoft. I see so many business owners signing up for Infusionsoft once their business has gotten to that point and then struggling to learn how to use Infusionsoft. And I see that's something that you also help people with as well.
We've done some training and such in Infusionsoft over the years. What I definitely recommend for people, though, is There's a couple of aspects to Infusionsoft. You want to have somebody who can really help you set it up properly. So you want to get some good support in that area, work with a specialist there. And you also want to be able to find somebody to help maintain it, sending broadcasts, doing some of the back end work on an ongoing basis, a virtual assistant or somebody who specializes in that area. Because that's one of those things, like, even if you learn it, it can be a pain to learn, right? Infusionsoft's not the easiest thing in the world to learn, but even if you learn it, that's just another example of something that should not be on your plate. For the most part, unless if you sell Infusionsoft services, then of course you want it on your plate. But find somebody who can help you with that. I mean, it's so easy when we're looking at this trap. Another aspect of the entrepreneur's trap is when we spend so much time and energy doing the things that in theory aren't on our yes list and shouldn't necessarily be on our plates, that's going to get in the way of growing the business. It's like we can spend you could spend 5 hours one week trying to figure out how to send out a broadcast through whatever tool you're using, or you could spend that time to like reach out and connect with potential clients in some way, shape, or form.
Definitely. Now, I have a question about online business managers, because you've, of course, created this training program for online business managers. How can a person know when it's time to hire someone, to get someone in their business to be their online business manager, and what does that person do for them?
So you're going to look to hire somebody at that level when you're probably at about the 6-figure range and above. So it's almost a little tongue-in-cheek to say it this way, but essentially you need to have a business for them to manage before you look to hire an online business manager. When we're in the first stage of growth of our business, I kind of call that stage 1, loosely up to about 6 figures, not written in stone, but just kind of as a way to track it. That's really the proving our business model stage. That's really looking at what are we offering, what do people want, what do they not want, really looking at our marketing and sales and looking at ways to generate, repeat sales and all of that kind of stuff. Once you've built a foundation there, once you've proven your business model, so you know what you're offering, you know that people want to buy it on a regular basis, not just like a one-time thing, but that they've bought it on a repeat basis in some fashion, then you have a foundation to grow on. Then that's where you want to look at having someone like an online business manager come into play. Because part of what happens when you're at the 6-figure and above range is there's just many more moving parts in the business. One of the bigger complaints that I'll hear from people who are at that stage of growth or beyond that stage is they may say, for example, like, I have really great people on my team, really great doers on my team, but they keep coming to me and they keep asking me questions and I keep having to give them information and I keep having to follow up with them and check in and all of that. When the role of an OBM is to come in and manage projects. So basically to manage whatever projects you have going on, those might be launches or promotions, different things like that. It's their role to also work with the team members. And in particular, if you're working with virtual or outsourced team members like virtual assistants and such, of course, they would work really closely with those team members, finding people, making sure they have what they need to get their work done and so on, looking at operations, making sure the business is set up in a way that it can run smoothly. And it's kind of like when you're at that stage of growth and you're really focused on your yes list and you're really focused on continuing to grow your company, you want to be able to have that person beside you who can kind of plug into whatever your vision is, whatever your goals are. They can plug into the bigger picture of what you want to create, and then they can just take that and get stuff done. Essentially.
Excellent.
Right? Yeah.
So theoretically, they should know more than we do about, the logistics of running an online business. I mean, this should be someone who comes in with a particular skill set, and we don't necessarily have to train them in the, what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not to say, so depending on who you need on the company too, it's not always the OBM that's going to know how to do every single thing, but it's up to them to find the other person then if need be.
Excellent.
Right? So, I mean, if you're working on something and you decide you need a copywriter to come in and help with a launch or a promotion or whatever it is, it's like, okay, great. They can go find somebody. It doesn't have to be on your plate to have to find everybody and kind of work with them day in and day out.
Excellent. Excellent. So, Tina, how can people work with you or learn more from you or get some of your juicy advice?
Well, I have my main website is Tina Forsyth. trades&rsquo.com. And by all means, people are welcome to connect there. We've talked about the book a little bit. The Entrepreneur's Trap is always a really good starting point to kind of connect with. And my intent, of course, whenever I write a book is to give some things that you can really take and use right away. It's written in a way where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start doing this today, hopefully. With maybe not every single thing in there. It takes a little bit of time. But we do offer a number of different kinds of training programs and such that take that work deeper. I like to work with people, especially when you're newer, to kind of looking at how the business is set up and how your business is being run, maybe looking at your revenue streams and how to leverage them and everything as well. We have a number of different training programs.
Excellent.
That people can plug into there. Yeah.
Excellent. Fabulous. And do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women in business who inspire you?
You know who I think one of my favorite people is I like Jillian Michaels. Now there's a number of people in my own industry, of course, who inspire me and who I've worked with and, kind of learned from and connected with over the years. But Jillian Michaels is one of these people. I mean, if people are familiar with her, she of course comes from the fitness industry, was on The Biggest Loser and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting because I listen to her podcast. I do her fitness videos. I like her fitness videos. I just really think she's a very fascinating woman. I think one of the things, and a very amazing businesswoman from what I can see too, right? Because she's taken the exposure that she got off of being on television and such, and has really started to expand that into other areas. And I think one of my favorite things that I like about her is just especially if you listen to her podcasts and such, is that there's just a real keep it real aspect to who she is, where it's kind of like, this is what's going on. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. It's kind of like a behind the scenes sort of approach. And I don't know, I really like that. I mean, I kind of really appreciate the keeping it real factor when I'm connecting with people. It might sound funny to say, but it's like, I want to know what isn't working or what's been a struggle as much as I want to know what does work. In some cases, there's always something more to be learned, I think, when we get to connect from that side too. So she's definitely one of my favorites.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I've got one of her videos as well, and I've done it quite a bit, and I love it, but I didn't even know she had a podcast, so thank you.
She does. It's great.
Must check it out.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share all of your tips, because I think that you help business owners with such an important piece of their business, because I've known so many people have gotten to that burnout point where, their business is just something that they can't handle and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So thank you so
seriously. And there is hope. There's hope. You know what I mean? Like if we get to that space and it's like, what have I got myself into? Just know it's all fixable. It's always fixable.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing to say, because I think so many people get themselves to that point and they just can't see the way out. And they think that, it's all on their shoulders to figure it out. And there is help out there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit sociallyholistic.com/SHP64 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Socially Holistic Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. Please help us help more women in business by giving us a 5-star review of this podcast. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more successful businesses there will be. So please leave a 5-star review today over at iTunes. Thank you.